Hi, I wanted to do a recording and share some thoughts about to sort of answer a question a lot of people ask, which is what happens in the in-person events. Um, we have a few of them scheduled, excuse me, for the springtime in Northern California. There's two in Northern California, there's one in Colorado, and one in Vermont. And it's kind of impossible to say, this is what's going to happen. We're all going to show up. We're going to sit together. We're going to share and talk. Then we're going to feel stuff and move around and maybe go touch ponies, maybe just be in nature. That's what it looks like from the outside. But what we're playing with um, through facilitation, perspectives, guidance, and experience is discovering a few things that are innate to each of us. When a lot of it is about learning, it's about presence and um, discernment. There are a lot of different ways presence is taught, and there for each of us, there's a unique way to learn what's being taught. In our in-person events, we address the mind, we address the body, we address the intangible, the non-physical, that we can sense through our body and navigate with the mind. There is a level of integration in the information that only comes when you're willing to learn, not only in a linear way, but also in an intuitive way, right? So the linear way is a step-by-step. It's learning in a way that says you have to know this before you know that, and until you have this foundation, you can't know another thing. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that is an approach, and it's how most of us were taught. In other words, it's teaching the mind first. Learning intuitively begins with the acknowledgement. It's beyond an assumption, it's an acknowledgement that you have innate senses that are already bringing you information that's completely usable. And because, so in other words, it's senses first, right? So there's mind first and there's senses first. And because we were largely educated from the mind first approach in our very young and formative years, we weren't really given the suggestion that paying attention to this feeling information, to pictures and senses, was even something to find valuable to look at. So in our in-person events, the tools that I share, the perspectives and the wisdom and the stories and the conversations that we have are all pointing awareness at where your intuitive nature is already feeding you information, whether or not it matches what the mind is looking for. And they begin to integrate. So it's not mind or senses, it's senses. And then what does the mind require? Aha, here's what the mind needs. Great, right back to senses. And then the mind goes, whoa, 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 okay, good. So what does the mind require? Very good. And then it's back to senses. This approach to, well, playing that way, organizing yourself that way, walking that way, discerning this way, it necessarily brings you to a state of presence, because you are creating a friendship among all of your different aspects. In other words, you are helping them discover how they were meant to work together, rather than one aspect be so dominating that the other just sits back and goes, well, all right, I'm right here whenever you need me, right? We start having the experience and knowing how it feels to be you when your various aspects can dance together, can play together, can communicate with one another. And that is a felt experience. It's a felt experience while your mind is still functioning beautifully. In fact, the mind can work with much greater clarity from a foundation of senses. Now, of course, it's not what we were taught in school, but the tools I share and the way that I share this has come from me living that way, literally watching the world from being organized this way, discerning this way, just because it was what was natural to me. It also became how I survived confusion. So what I'm sharing with you, this is why it doesn't fit into a modality. It's about sharing awareness and gifts and clarity and intuitive information, pointing you at your own senses, and then facilitating and guiding for how the thoughts and the senses can dance together and share information, right, in service to your heart. And this is why horses, why among the animals, nature itself is absent of judgment, self-harmonizing, self-perpetuating, right? And when we start to recognize that absence of judgment and the self-harmonizing and self-perpetuating forces and movement and nature within ourselves, then we really can experience ourselves as part of the whole. All of that experience happens here. It's not out there somewhere. So in the in-person, when we play in person, even in one-on-ones, the whole point is to share with you information, guidance, tools, resources, and clarity, and an energetic presence that opens the space, excuse me, and makes it easier for you to recognize that part of you that is already healthy, whole, and complete. Now, when the events are centered around horses, sometimes it is just because having horses around facilitates that sense of harmony. So many people are much happier relaxing and letting their heart open in the presence of animals than just in the presence of other people. And sometimes it's just a different tone of open-heartedness when we're among animals. And what matters is how safe people feel within themselves, right? Because you can, even a person might take themselves into an outer environment where everything is perfectly safe and completely no threat from any of the people around. And yet if they still don't feel safe within themselves, they'll still show up reserved and defended, right? Again, it's not a bad thing. It's just how defenses work. It's how trauma survival works. So being among the horses assists to generate a space where people who find themselves feeling unfamiliar with a sense of safety or being comfortable in your own skin might have an easier time feeling comfortable in their skin. Then there are some of the in-person events, like the one in Vermont, where a few people are invited. There's 6 spaces for people to bring their own horses, 6 or 7. I have to go back and read what we decided, but when it is an event for people who live and work specifically with horses or are teachers or trainers, then the information, the tools, the awareness, the conversation shapes itself to make itself relevant in your world. Organizing yourself to be comfortable in your own skin, to lead on a foundation of senses that are happy to integrate and play with the intellect and everybody's friends. It creates an energetic presence in yourself that makes a lot more sense to horses. They're feeling us before, I mean, they're feeling us when we wouldn't even think about it. The moment we show up physically, they're sensing what our energy is like, what are our thoughts that are happening. Not that they are noodling it out like a psychic. They're watching the tones and the patterns and the tendencies and the push and pull of the thought patterns that are happening. And so the more I can be vulnerable enough to know what I'm bringing to the conversation, the much easier time I'm going to have with the horses, the much easier time they are going to have with me. And I then become much more available for the connection that wants to happen in that place where there is no judgment, in that place that self-harmonizes, in that place that self-perpetuates, right? That's where we can experience connection, which is a feeling and a knowing that our mind finds to be valuable information, where we can then use what we know much more effectively, right? So then the other part of coming to play in the in-person events is for people who are teachers and trainers working with others, or people who have relationships with families and friends and colleagues. Presence, when your priority becomes presence, your clarity of communication grows exponentially. And it is largely because you are more aware of what you are communicating, and you become much more clear to anybody who's listening. So riding instructors, when you know how to organize yourself this way and you go to teach a lesson, you have a different experience in your body as you share information, as you share guidance, as you are feeling your student, you're feeling the horse respond to the student. You know what it is that they need to change in their body to invite the horse to do this or move this way or open a space so the horse can actually give them what they're asking for, right? Again, we can approach that scenario from the mind first and just say, look, step by step, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's an approach, right? We could also approach the same scenario from awareness of our own intuitive sense, from an awareness of what it feels like to move the body in this way so that the horse can lift the shoulder and move forward. That, knowing what that feels like in my body when I'm standing in the middle of the arena using words to talk to that rider, knowing how it feels in my body, that is communication. The rider's body is going to feel it. The horse is going to feel it. They're going to feel you moving energy, moving awareness, moving clarity through your own senses. And it makes it eons easier for both the horse and the rider to get much, much more out of the words that you share. In other words, we're communicating in multiple dimensions at the same time. We're communicating on a sensory level, on an intuitive level, on a spoken level, on a visual level, and actually it's more than that. And very much on the heart level too. Ultimately, in our events, it always comes back around to the heart. So what we talk about as the heart is often so misunderstood. And so it's one of my favorite things is clarity about the experience of your own heart. And here's the thing, it's so simple. And this is what makes it seem so hard, because the mind approach prefers when things are complicated and can be organized, this before this, but not after this, and all that stuff. But when something is so simple as beingness, there's nothing to organize. So the mind doesn't know what to do. So we play with the mind and we give it a job that assists, that helps the mind to find ease with the simplicity of the heart. And the heart, your heart, is an experience. Your heart is knowable by its effect on your body, on your speech, on your eyes, on your tone, on your responses, on your absence of reactivity. The heart itself is beyond definition and description, but we can know it by its effect on all of our instrument and our awareness and our thoughts, and how they function and ripple out into the world. So I hope that helps you have a little more sense of what we do in the in-person events. And please write to me if you have questions, and I will look forward to sharing with anybody that wants to show up, whether you have anything to do with horses or not. This is really about assisting humans to know the aspect of themselves that is common to horses, to dogs, to all of life. Like the saying is, be the person your dog thinks you are, right? Can the mind really get you there? It really is about offering experiences that help you get to know yourself in the absence of conflict. And in the absence of conflict, your innate intelligence, your deep knowing, your heart, the uniqueness that you are, the purity that you are, connected to all of consciousness, the aspect of you that lights up when we talk about oneness and unity. That's what we're playing with. And we just put it into context, because there's nothing better than actually, like I think this is the whole point of being here on the planet, is to have an intimate relationship with the heart, and then let it bring itself into everything that you do, regardless of what that is. And that, in my view, that's how we change the world.